One of the readers of this blog, Justin Weir, was kind enough to say that he liked my unscripted, just talking into this webcam about, I talked about higher education, and he asked if I might do it regarding some other topic. And I figured I would try one. One of the ones he suggested was the meaning of life. So I am going to just hold forth, and hopefully it won't be too disjointed. I am aware that most people see happiness, pleasure, whatever, as the goal for life well led. After all, there's many people can say, hey, we're only a little infinitesimal speck in the cosmos. After all, that's what Buddhists say, we're impermanent and we are really insignificant, and so why not seek pleasure? And of course, there's simply the temptations of pleasure. It's, what could be wrong with fun? Fun is more fun than is more attractive than seriousness. And how many people have, been driven crazy workaholics to get heart attacks and die and not have had any pleasure? I understand the argument, and I think it is weak, for the reasons I'll say in a minute. Then there's others who are the balance advocates, who say, well, you need to balance, work and productivity with pleasure, both because you'll live longer, you'll be healthier, and you're entitled to some pleasure. It's too Calvinist, too ascetic to focus on mere productivity. And while I certainly can understand that we were all human, we're not all Gandhi. Gandhi certainly was one who denied himself all pleasures, including he was celibate from age 35 on, although married until he died at 79. Very few people are what they can live the, quote, supernormal life. But I would like to argue that the life well led, the meaningful life, is one to which when we aspire to be more like a Gandhi. Now, Gandhi, of course, was a socialist. He called for the dismantling of all the instruments of capitalist production and calling for these little small local businesses, while fully recognizing that we wouldn't therefore have technological advances. I don't think you have to adopt his point of view, but I do think that the Gandhian notion of the life well led, that is trying to live in the service of making the biggest difference for the world possible, is indeed, at least I think is a very wise, if not the only justifiable definition of the life well led. For those of you who read this blog, I've written about the concept of the meter, and I do think that is the best way to define or to keep track of how good a life you're living. If you do buy my notion that the life well led is indeed about how much good you do, because after all, if there are two people, one whose goal is work-life balance or even pure hedonism, and the other is focused on trying to make a difference as much as possible, it seems clear that the person who's made a bigger difference, who's made a difference to those in his sphere of influence or her sphere of influence, as now, and even more so, those who have ripple effects, so that after they die have left an important legacy in terms of improving the quality of life for more people, clearly have lived a better life than somebody who is striving for work-life balance, spending a lot of time playing golf, watching TV, video games, and even playing Monopoly with their family. So, to make that somewhat easier, and I certainly don't think it's easy, to live that life, I encourage you, and I don't do this all the time myself, but I occasionally do, and it helps. Every time you got a chunk of time that you're facing, ask yourself where it would score on the meter. Now, what is this meter? It's kind of arbitrary, but it could be scored from -100 to +100. -100 would be selling crack to kids, because that's clearly going to have a negative effect on them, on their, eventually when they're adults, on their children, on society. I would call that -100. +100, the other end of the scale, I would say, is somebody who has recognized that his or her best talents would be in scientific research and devoted it to the curing of cancer. They have a special gift in that area. Maybe they're a mathematical physicist who understands, who will be in a position to do very clever molecular assays and analyze the math involved. They're using their unique skills, so they therefore have a potential to make a bigger difference in the service of something critical that is an unmet need. So, of course, not all of us are going to have that potential, but if we, every time we have a chunk of time, asking ourselves, with that next chunk of time, what could I spend it on that would score high on the meter relative to my strengths, my passions, my interests, I think that is the key to the life well led. And I stress not only that they be, things that, that they would in abstract score high, but for example, I am very passionate about, as you know, I believe that higher education is America's most overrated product. And because I have a PhD in the evaluation of education, I'm in a better position to help address that than some other societal problem. So you'll score higher on the meter if you focus on using something that you have a lot of skill in and some passion around. I also think that you're going to score higher on the meter by focusing on goals that relatively few people focus on. For example, I am very strongly pro-choice and very strongly pro-gay marriage, and yet millions of others are pro-choice and pro-gay marriage. So my effort is going to have very little incremental value added. Whereas debunking higher education's primacy is something that most people don't, believe in or care about. They've bought the absolute canard that, education is the answer, education is the cure to helping people out of poverty, higher education is the key to a better job, higher education is America's American higher education is the greatest in the world. All of that crap, you'll earn $1 million more over your lifetime. That is all crap and not true, but most people believe it. So my arguing on the other side, advocating for far greater truth from the higher education community, for example, the college report card that I talk about, is one of the ways I can truly score highest on the meter, because the amount of benefit that I'm likely to provide to the world that wouldn't otherwise be provided is great. I'm going to stop here, because everything else I could say from here on about how to live the life well led, the meaningful life, is less important. And so for me to spend time on talking about anything else is going to dilute from that or distract from that key. In a sentence, I think that striving to live the life by the meter is core to the meaningful life, the life well led. And thanks for listening. I do welcome your comments. Feel free to post your comments on this blog. Bye.